Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
With 6 months in office, it's clear that the Trump administration is running its own playbook. But are those plays based on best practices? The National Academy of Public Administration was chartered by Congress to help the federal government operate on good government principles. And they're out with a new set of papers suggesting how this administration might be more effective. Here to share his perspective is the president and CEO of the Academy, James Christian Blockwood. James Christian, thanks so much for joining me.
Terry, thanks so much. And let me just start by saying congratulations to you. This is the first time I've had a chance since you've been in the new role, and you've done wonderful things here at the Academy, and looking forward to all that you do at the network there.
Well, I very much appreciate that, because I wanted to congratulate you as well. We have our little mutual admiration society, but you've now been at the helm of the Academy for 6 months. So is it feeling a little more comfortable there?
Well, I wouldn't exactly say comfortable, but we've got a great team here, an incredible mission, and we're doing our best to make a difference for the American people.
Well, so one of your first initiatives since you've been on board there is to start a series of white papers. You call them action-oriented white papers that would respond to key issues that are facing federal leaders in what you call a rapidly evolving environment. Talk to us a little bit about why this initiative. Why did you decide to take the white paper approach, and what issues are you trying to address?
Yeah, well, if we go back, and you go back 6 months, we had a major event. We had an inauguration of a new president that introduced a new way of thinking about government, the workforce, and how it serves the people. The Academy, as you know, has been around for 60 years and has had a model of providing research and studies to government leaders at all levels. But with this new environment and under a new administration, that's not enough. We need to be more direct, more specific about what government leaders can do. And importantly, think about different ways of getting information, evidence, and the experience of our fellows and our staff here out in the hands of people that can really use it.
Were there any particular incidents or trends that really launched you on this particular path?
No particular trend. I would say thinking about what's important to management is leadership. And so that's always been a strong trait for good management. And so that was one of the first papers that we decided to lean into, which was what role does leadership play, and how in particular can political leadership work with career leadership, and vice versa? How can career leadership support political leadership? And I think that's important. So not a trend, but something that has been fundamental in how government operates, which is leadership. And then a second issue was around the human capital workforce, both the resource side, but then also the strategy and management of that as well.
Well, let's dig into each of those papers in turn. So going back to the first one, I mean, it is almost always a challenge to convince an incoming political administration to work with their career civilians. Is there something different about this time that you felt like that should be the first topic you tackle?
Well, I agree with you. It's a difficulty of a long time now. And part of that is due to kind of a narrative that's been existing for a while. There's this kind of public discourse generally frames political leadership and career leadership as being on different sides and having tension. Sometimes that's referred to as healthy tension, but nonetheless coming from different perspectives. And given the kind of current environment and the way things are being seen from politicals and career officials, it was important to start with this. And one of the things I would point to is understanding the specific role of each. Both political leaders and career leaders have specific roles. For a political, it's to implement the president's agenda. And for a career official, it's to provide the insights, the expertise, the experience, the knowledge to help bring whatever that political agenda is to full effect for the administration. And that's been a controversial topic, needlessly a controversial topic in recent time here. So that was one thing that we wanted to do, was start by saying leadership is important. Understanding the different roles, responsibilities, and duties is important. And then also thinking about giving some best practices as how these different groups can work together.
That paper talks a lot about the importance of trust and clear communication. Do you lay out specific strategies that both political and career leaders could follow to build that sense of trust?
We do. And we talk about, one, just having leadership roundtables, which is having a political leadership share what the agenda is. But then also having a political understand that career officials have a lot of experience and knowledge to share and being willing to hear that. Part of that means that civil servants have to faithfully do their jobs and understand that if there are any potential roadblocks, that they work in earnest to find alternative approaches. So the first kind of strategy or best practice here would be to have that open two-way communication, and that can be done through a standing meeting or roundtable amongst leadership. A second thing to do would be to communicate often and frequently through different mechanisms and throughout the entire workforce. So it's not just your leadership, but it's communicating a plan to all those who would be involved in executing it. And then finally, a third would be a feedback mechanism where when plans are shared and certain tactics or efforts are implemented, get a sense of if that's working or if something needs to be adjusted, and leaving space for that to be communicated, and then eventually have different plans if that's what's needed.
I'm speaking with James Christian Blackwood. He's the president and CEO of the National Academy of Public Administration. There's much I want to dig into with you there, but I'm going to go on to the second paper. Because the second paper, you talked about focusing on HR capacity. I mean, the Trump administration has really tested HR staffs over the last few months. What issues did you center on as you looked at this topic?
Well, one thing that we looked at, which is slightly nuanced here, but an important distinction, you have the human resource piece, which is the people that are helping to lead the workforce and to implement the different strategies. And then you have the human capital apparatus or system more broadly. And one of the things that we tried to highlight is the responsibility of the human resource leadership to lay out a detailed plan, to help inventory skills, and to help manage the entire process. Whereas the actual human capital kind of broader mechanism is not just what's happening with the people in the organization, but all the different aspects that get you to mission delivery. So it's not just about people, but what about looking at how the agency is delivering on its mission? How are they measuring that? What about looking at what are the different skill sets that are needed, not just with the current workforce, but in the future? And looking at what are the mechanisms to which you can look at other supplemental or ways to augment what might be needed to get the organization to be able to deliver its mission most efficiently.
So that rings a familiar bell for me. Mission first, principles always, accountability to both. But I mean, we know that federal agencies are not good at strategic workforce planning. The Academy's been called in a number of times to help agencies with that task. How do you think they move forward on a mission-first alignment of their resources in practice?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you're right in terms of it being very difficult. It's a real challenge. I mean, a lot of people don't realize the scope to which government agencies operate and to the speed and, quite frankly, the quality to which they deliver. So again, yeah, very difficult to do. I think one of the first things to do is to recognize what's at hand. I think the second thing is to maybe look at what are the authorities or different rules and regulations and laws that are going to be needed to make any changes. And then what are the stakeholders that need to be involved? And that's not just the agency itself. It's the White House, it's Congress, it's the public more generally. And then finally, when you put all of this together, what's the overall plan that the agency's developed, and how are they going to communicate it, not just internally, but externally as well?
So both of these papers and the recommendations that you've just articulated could be submitted in any government class as best practices, right? That's what the Academy is known for. You've documented them here. Do you think that there has been too much distrust or disruption, water under the bridge in this administration to bring back both sides to your leadership roundtable and talk about best practices?
I wouldn't say there's been too much. I would say there's not been enough trust, and I would say we got off to the wrong start. I think the current administration came in with a very specific agenda and had a mandate to achieve that agenda. One part of that was looking at each individual agencies and individual that work in those agencies, their roles to helping achieve that agenda, but not recognizing that you're going to need the career workforce to do that. And there was this idea that public servants are something that can be dismissed, or something that aren't as valued, or there's a certain view that is somewhat disparaging towards the workforce. And I think that was a misstep to take that view and to allow that narrative to perpetuate itself. And so I would say that if there is any distrust, it was born out of this initial start that didn't truly appreciate or recognize all that the career civil service has to offer. And so part of what we've outlined in one of the white papers here is about building trust and doing that with respect and dignity towards everyone that's involved. And I think that would have been a good lesson for the administration to have started with, which was to honor civil servants and to respect the roles that they have played in the past and that they're going to play in the future. But I will say, Terry, it's not too late. We're 6 months in. There's still a lot of work to do. The current administration, on one hand, still has an agenda and has some accomplishments under its belt. I think to achieve the rest of that agenda and to add to that list of accomplishments, it's going to need the federal workforce to do that. And I think there's an opportunity to revisit how that federal workforce is viewed, how it's being communicated with, and bring them back to the table in a respectful way so that this can be done, whatever the agenda is going forward, can be done responsibly, respectfully, and collaboratively with all those that need to do it.
Well, as you make that very hopeful statement, and we've talked about the first 2 papers in your series, will there be more? And if so, what topics?
Yeah, we're really looking to do many papers that are going to help current leaders with practical issues. And one of them would be on the return to office mandate. That's something that earlier this year, the current administration issued a mandate for federal agencies to return. I believe it was to 5 days a week across the different agencies. And we've done a paper on how to look at that from a best practice perspective. And we've taken really 3 different ways of viewing this. One is an organizational performance, an organizational health, and the other is around cost. And if you do that, it's looking at, how can you ensure when people come back that it's collaborative and that you have a good continuity of operations? And then when they are there, how can you ensure that morale stays high, employee engagement is where it needs to be, and that you have an overall organizational culture that fits what you're trying to achieve? And then finally, you're considering all of your costs, and that's costs that are associated with real estate. That might be costs that have to do with technology or relocation. So this paper around the return to office takes a real practical look at, if there's a mandate, which there is, and you want to achieve it, what are the ways and the steps that you need to take to make sure it's done responsibly and takes all things into consideration so you can have a good plan on how to achieve it.
We'll be looking for that. I've been speaking with James Christian Blackwood, the President and CEO of the National Academy of Public Administration. Thank you so much for joining me today, and continued best wishes for success.
Thank you so much. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our 1,000+ fellows that also congratulate you and wish you well. Thanks.
We'll post this interview and a link to the Academy's papers on federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.